I'm very honored to be here. Hilda asked me so many months ago, invited me so many months ago that it's embarrassing now that I walking up here, I realize everything I thought I wanted to do, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I should sit down and think about it again. Everything sounds so good in this space. All the voices, all the poems, the beautiful acoustics here too, right? I think I should have better things to read. Could I borrow some? So I will start. Let me start with a poem that, Jenna said we could take some time to set some context. So here's some context for this poem. The poem is called Windfall Dutch Barn, Salt Springville, New York. You may recognize that title. I wrote it, I think about 30 years ago, the last time I read here. And if I read here every 30 years, I was doing the math in my head. It didn't come out good. But that evening, a good friend of Julie's and mine and some others here, Joe Mish, read and also played his guitar and sang with the doors open against the evening behind. And it was a powerful moment because there was a thunderstorm coming. It was just a confluence of strength at that time. So I wrote this poem attempting to capture some of that. So I'm going to read it. And you're going to listen to it. Because, when I'm done, the refreshments are next. Don't fall over here. Seasoned, if you can't hear me, don't say anything. Seasoned with assault, the barns withstood the fat and lean of 2 rough centuries. One will squared these beams, scribed each plank with the sawtooth's arc, adzed each tenon, chiseled each mortise, and clouted each peg home. By summer's end, the pastel spurt of spring has toughened in the waxy wood, and blasted daffodil and thistle wrangle over root space in next year's sod. We've missed your sturdy voice, all these gathered friends, less one father, lost to this ground, gained to another. I see his face before the storm's light overture blackens through the double door, advancing tiers of peaks. You take the stage backlit by the first lightning stroke. Retune the bottom end of your guitar to thunder. Each spangled string will pitch your voice deeper than 200 Augusts pile their harvest up the drifted walls. We scatter on the threshing floor, on the civility of chairs, where formerly a haymow stood with crossed flails bladed for the stalks. Large friend, level your axe and charge. Cut loose a barrage of cords to rout the Tsar's best Cossacks' jangled scimitars. Make song sustain the buckled knees of lovers, the bodies of the fallen chanting against the chafing stones, the solitude of the abandoned, the chained might that bent the slave song blue. Make this music for their resurrection, more of them than rain beating on the rusty blades of grass. Joe's dad had passed not very long before that. I remember him very well. I went down to New Jersey with Joe to visit his dad. And I remember he's Polish. And in the basement, he played polka music. I polkaed with his dad. It was one of the best polkas I had done. Getting to be let's see this one. The title isn't right now because I cut off the lines where the title lived, so it doesn't have a title. But this context is I had my uncle who had been through World War I and survived, obviously. Liked to play Santa Claus at family Christmases. He'd sort of go away, nobody'd see him, and then all of a sudden Santa Claus would come in the room and play with the kids. And I was the youngest of the kids at one time, believe it or not. And so this poem is about the evening when that innocence was lost, maybe, not sure. The Great War's mustard gas cost my uncle his teeth and hair. The Great Depression took his livelihood, and the next war his business. Diabetes took his wife, and eventually his legs to the knee. Till he lost them, he'd bring his lunch and Tiny, his Boston Terrier, every clement day, and sat down beside her grave. An amputee, he'd been parked in the county home in his wheelchair, his eyes round and wet as Tiny's, savoring the residue of Prince Albert tobacco in his ashy pipe. When I was 4, my cousin whispered at the family Christmas that Santa Claus, he'd come in unseen, as always by the fireplace, was in fact my uncle. He smelled like my uncle's pipe, all right. But when he'd heard that there was no one left to believe, he took off the hat and beard. He unbuttoned the red coat. He hung it in the closet. It was true then. The real Santa Claus, not the copycat in Klein's basement, was disguised as my uncle. As long as I could keep his secret, I would. It's been 60-odd years. Hardly anyone's left, but I think it's time in this age of unbelief that people know the truth. It won't be easy, but they have to grow up sometime. I'm glad you got that. It was risky. Well, let's see. My little 7 minutes has been able to expand a little bit, so I will just venture one to do that with. Okay, Black Snake at the Iroquois Festival. Next weekend, yes, it is, at the Iroquois Museum in Cobleskill, right? Susan's been there many times. Wonderful festival. Iroquois people come from all over the place. And go with food, dancing, and music, and meeting old friends. It's a wonderful time of year. This happened at the Iroquois Festival when our daughter was very little. Probably over 20 years ago. But, well, it tells its own story, so I'll let it do that. Okay? We set 3 paper plates in the grass between the picnic tents and ravine at the wood's edge. I broke our daughter's fried bread, murmuring thanks. Steam uncoiled, brushed my hand, and branched along some shifty breeze. A handful of Mohawk kids scooped pollywogs in cups from the concession, their family's current stand. They flocked around a lean, sweat-beaded young man who drew a hoop of writhing snake from the reeds, a red blossom where he'd sliced the head off. "You know this snake?" he called across the ravine. "Can't say I do," I said, "but why risk it with them?" Past the woods, we couldn't see a lumbering freight shake the trees and hoot some vestige of its victory. Our girl asked to touch the snake. I carried her over. She smoothed its patches of tweedy, iridescent black. "She's more brave than you," the boy in a Barney shirt needled his brother. "You were right," I said again, "not to take a chance, not with them." But he, astonished at the drive in that headless spine, roped it over his arm again and again. The kids packed behind him when he crossed the knoll to find the museum's naturalist. He scanned the faces of milling visitors, suddenly hushed at this apparition from some world where men strode bare-chested out of the wood, wearing snakes on their arms. He'd hoped the white man with the curious girl had known something final. Well, back in the sluice, a death mask stared down narrow, trackless halls of reeds. While in the tents, a woman beaded lightning down my sleeve. And now, through apple leaves, as dawn pales blue the hood of the moon's last milky eye, I'm after sliding an arm around my sleeping girl, who's of another mind, She squiggles down, feet perched on my wrist, poised to chase or be chased around the circle we make. Soon must come her dream of another life she has to run through one more time. You like that? I'll read it again. Maybe this last, because I can see you're starting to think, when's he going to stop and get to the goodies? No, you wouldn't do that. This is, yeah. It's, this, I want to point out, this book, Bertha, I thought Bertha was going to be here, Bertha Rogers, who's retiring from Bright Hill Press after founding it umpty years ago. The day after, well, it was New Year's Day, actually, 2012, she called up and she said, Bob, she says, I think it's about time I published a book of yours. And I said, well, I can't argue with you. So she said, you got any manuscripts? Sure, I have about 6. She said, you pick one out, okay? So I put one together. And this, it's called Orinoke Wetumpka. The 2 titles of 2 of the big poems in here. Orinoke is the Spanish word for the Orinoco River in Venezuela. And, it's the second biggest river in the hemisphere after the Amazon, right next to it, right? So I had a group of students down in the Orinoco region, and I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, I'm not going to read it, but it's half the book is that poem. It's over there. And why did I do that? Oh, and then Wetumpka is the other poem here. It's Phil Young, who did the cover. That's it. He did the cover artwork, and we co-wrote a poem in here, set partly in Wetumpka, Oklahoma, which is the place of his growing up. My poems are heavily place dependent, as you probably can hear. They're in the barn, they're at the festival, they're some place is the theater for the poem. Phil's dad, this is getting to be a theme of this small little reading. Phil's dad moved from Oklahoma. He was a Cherokee, Scots-Irish guy. Moved here from Oklahoma in his 80s, had some health problems and passed on in the year 2001. This is a little sonnet, so it's not too long, an elegy for Ernie. Pine Lake Memorial Trail of Tears Stomp Dance is the title. I was out at Pine Lake, Hartwick's Pine Lake, with a group of students one spring day, and they were writing, and this poem sort of took place, and I got to write it down. So it's Pine Lake Memorial Trail of Tears Stomp Dance for Ernest Buford Young, 1919 to 2001. Strings of footprints lay along the lake, an exodus recorded in thaw, white as this paper, as if spirits were passing through again this year, not too far north for tears that grow roses. The young, white April sun is the same as theirs, our shadows the same blue of the same sky. It stopped me, the beauty of their walking before me, the beauty of their walking behind me. Their prints are thawed clear to gravel, rimmed with remnants of an ancient white rage that hardly dimples the tree shadows pierced by the sun's lances. Then, from behind me, the first butterfly springs, the slant of those smoky eyes on her unfolding wings, banded by horizons of bright sunrise. And how she dances. So, thank you kindly. You don't have to stop. I get to introduce the next reader person, but I will make it refreshment. And now presenting refreshment.